Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Parenting Bear series number 2, Stress and Anxiety Management. I am Lauren Vines. I am a licensed master social worker and a licensed chemical dependency counselor. I focus on secondary, so middle school and high school. And I'm excited that all of you could join us today. So let's get started. All right, so what is stress? So stress is a feeling of emotional or physical tension. It can come from any event or thought that makes you feel frustrated, angry, nervous. Stress is your body's reaction to a challenge or demand. In fact, to moderate amounts of stress can be good for you. So it is normal for us to have stress. Stress is exciting. Stress can be a motivator to some extent, but too much stress can cause various problems. Of course, we know that. It can have a negative effect on relationships, family, friends, and can even make you susceptible to illnesses. I think we all can experience sometimes when we're really stressed how we come down with nausea and headaches and those types of things. So it's normal to experience stress. Let me minimize this, sorry. But it's impossible to avoid it. So here's some signs that you may be experiencing too much stress. So of course, you're going to have those body cues. So that could be a tight throat, some sweaty palms, headaches, fatigue, nausea, some uneasiness, indigestion, possibly some depression-related symptoms like isolation, or the ability to talk about our emotions. Of course, you're going to experience some frustration. When we're stressed, we tend to be irritable. And then, of course, changes in sleep and eating patterns. So if you're experiencing any type of these body cues, it may be a symptom that you may be experiencing too much stress. Illnesses, stress can cause high blood pressure. It can cause coronary disease. It can even cause ulcers. It's too much stress can affect a person's immune system, making it more difficult to combat those illnesses when they occur. And I think this is really important with COVID as well. So, COVID in general has caused a lot of stress in our everyday lives. And so being mindful to use the coping skills that I talk about here in a little bit to kind of alleviate that stress as much as possible. There's a great deal of research indicating that when people are under a lot of stress, they tend to have more accidents. So an increase of accidents is probable. People who are stressed are more likely to follow those safety precautions and have slower reaction times because they're preoccupied with what comes next or that worry component that we're constantly thinking of what comes next or what we need to do. So people who are under too much stress generally aren't able to enjoy themselves. So you're going to talk about the importance of that self-care. So that decreases satisfaction of finding pleasure in things that you oftentimes used to enjoy or maybe have enjoyed, a couple weeks ago. So that's being mindful of that decreased satisfaction in things. And I know there was a student on here that plays volleyball. So if for any instance, that student starts to feel this dissatisfaction in playing volleyball, then that may warrant you to ask some more questions. And of course, we have the drug and alcohol use. So people who are under too much stress do not have the effective coping skills they need, and they run the risk of abusing substances, illicit substances. So you want to make sure that you cope with the stress in constructive ways. That means eating healthy, deep breathing exercises, those types of things. When this happens, when you use substances, the stress is masked. So I talk about this often as a licensed chemical dependency counselor. Sometimes individuals will use, say, marijuana or alcohol as a way to relieve that stress. But the reality is that stress is still going to be there when that high or that hangover is over. That stress is still there. So it's really kind of coping with that stress as it comes instead of masking it with something else, which is why I emphasize the use of drugs and alcohol. Okay, so here's some ways to decrease stress. You don't want to ignore it. I mean, stress is inevitable. You're never going to avoid it, and it's always going to be there. So learn to recognize what causes those stress in your life. When you feel like stress is coming on, take those steps to control it rather than letting it control you. So whenever possible, try to eliminate significant stressors in your life. So for instance, for students, if that stressor is overwhelmingness with all of the AP classes, maybe help them create some sort of a schedule where they can effectively complete those assignments without increasing that stress that they need, or constantly worrying about, I've got to do history next, or I've got to do math next. I'm really big on getting kids to create calendars and create to-do lists, because that is a motivator. If you have a to-do list and you have 10 assignments on there that you need to get done and you start marking them off, it's that motivation factor to it. You just keep going. It's like, I only have 3 left. So I think that's really important, to not ignore what's causing stress, but more to find those effective coping skills to deal with it. You want to reframe it. So you can control the way events affect you. So you decide how large an extent or how stressful a particular situation is for you. And one way to do this is to reframe that thinking process. And I talk about this a lot when I'm working with kids, is changing that negative aspect into a positive one. So for example, if your student overreacts to a certain situation, instead of letting that upset them, maybe find the optimistic side of that, or the positive side in that. Try to reframe what's causing them stress, or what's frustrating them or annoying them, into something more positive where they're able to cope with it. Because there are going to be similar situations in our lives where we're going to have certain things that kind of trigger that stress, and it's going to remind you of something else. But if they're immediately able to reframe that thought into something positive, they're going to be able to cope with it a lot better. You want to examine and change your beliefs. So your beliefs determine a lot about your life, and we have these beliefs embedded in us. I mean, some of it is the way we were raised, some of it is how, the environment that we grow up in. Your beliefs is going to determine what will and will not be stressful for you. So sometimes certain faulty beliefs lead to an increase of stress. So for kids, and especially adolescents and females, that faulty belief of the girl next to me is doing so much better on this math assignment than I am, that's a faulty belief. That's going to cause some stress. That's going to cause some anxiety. That could lead to a little bit of depression and lack of self-confidence. And so really having them change that faulty belief that, yeah, they may have made a better assignment this time, but you made one last time, or you may make a better one next time. And so really changing those beliefs. If you believe that your children should be behaved, here's another one. This is another faulty belief. If you believe that your children should be well behaved at all times, you're likely going to experience some sort of stress. If we have the unrealistic expectation that our child is going to be 100% perfect at all times, you're going to experience stress. And then not only that, your child is going to lead that and also experience that stress. To alter that belief, you want to allow for that normal misbehavior. That's common in all children. So, at some point as children are getting older, especially in the elementary years, your children are going to be they can be manipulative at times. They can lie sometimes. And so that's a normal behavior, not saying that it's okay, but don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it stress you, because when that belief comes forward and you're stressed, that child is going to be stressed as well. Okay, the next one is don't be a perfectionist. It's not possible to be perfect in all areas and aspects of your life. So don't be too hard on yourself. Realize that you cannot do everything. As parents right now in this pandemic, in this situation, it's very difficult to manage. And I feel for the families, and I feel for the parents who are having to make the best decisions for their families and for their lives. And be realistic in your expectations. Be realistic in your kids' expectations. If you have an expectation that they're going to make a 99 in all honors classes, yes, it's possible, absolutely. But at the same time, if we're setting that expectation up and that child does not make a 99 in AP history, then what does that make them feel like? That makes them feel like a failure, or that they have let you down. And one of the biggest things that Jenna, the elementary social worker, and I talk about is children at the end of the day, they want to please you. They want to make you happy. They want to do everything they can to please you, to please their teacher, to please their friends. And so really have those realistic expectations of yourself, more importantly as a parent, and then your student as well. Okay, so here's some additional steps or tips to decrease stress. Develop good problem-solving skills. And this is really key for our kids. If parents are able to develop good problem-solving skills, then the kids are going to be able to have and exhibit those good problem-solving skills as well. So really try to clearly define the exact problem that's happening, the exact problem that's causing you that stress. Create a list of various ways that problem could be managed. Evaluate each solution with your child, have that open communication, and then make the decision that is best for you and your student. Once you're able to develop those problem solving skills, we are a product of our environment. They're going to be able to do the same. And that's going to be really important as they continue through their adolescent years and in high school and essentially as an adult. We need those great problem solving skills. You want to choose your time wisely. So it's important to decide which activities are important to you and which are not. It's also important to know your limit. Don't take on more than you can't handle. Again, as a parent myself, you know, I have to understand when it's okay to say no. And it is okay to say no. I talked about that in the next section. It's okay to say no. Set those boundaries for yourself and for your kids and allow your kids to do the same. I talked about earlier having that to-do list. So really kind of sitting down, these are the things I need to do. This is about the time span that it's going to take, and start marking those off and give yourself enough time to complete it efficiently and not quickly. Know that it's okay to say no. I just kind of talked about it. It's so very important to set boundaries for yourself and boundaries for your kids. You know, in jobs, sometimes if we're, especially in like my type of field, it can become very, very overwhelming. And so sometimes, you know, at some point you've got to say, no, I can't do this right now, but I can in a minute. And that's okay. And that's okay for your kids to express that as well, but in a respectful manner. Don't put off decisions that need to be made. So once you have all the information you need to make an effective decision, try to make that decision as quickly as possible. Don't change that decision instantly, because you really want to give time to process that, try that decision out. And if that doesn't work, then you can try a different one. That's again, going back to those problem solving skills. And of course, you want to get organized. Organization is really important. When people experience anxiety, some people use cleaning as an effective way to cope. Some people will do yard work, those types of things. Organized can really overall make us feel healthier and better. And it's really setting those goals and sticking to them. And I think that's key. Getting organized involves creating a plan, and our kids need to know how to create plans. That goes back to, again, those problem solving skills that we all need. Plan your activities in advance. So if your kids are stressed, or you're stressed and it's overwhelming with work, and of course we've got COVID and all these things going on, try to make accommodations as needed and plan those activities. I will tell you, one of the biggest things kids need is consistency. Kids need to know what comes next, especially at the elementary and younger levels. They need to know what comes next, how to do this, and it needs to be a plan. They like that consistency. When you throw a wrench in it, which truly is life, and that's going to happen, they can sometimes become dysregulated. And that's where it comes into play of modeling those effective coping skills and really, you know, let's talk about the problem. Let's talk how we create a solution to this problem. When we have a to-do list, or we're getting organized, of course, that goes back with that motivation factor. It gives you that pleasure in saying, okay, I just did this. I just completed this task that I didn't think I could. And now what do I need to do next? I need to do my math assignment. Okay, let me get this done. Let's make a plan. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to go 7, 8, 9, 10. And once that math's done, that's another motivation factor. I've checked that off my list. So now I can go to the next assignment. Organization is really is a great motivation factor. Okay, so I'm going to move a little bit on to anxiety because, again, stress is very common. You're not going to completely eliminate stress. Stress is a good thing. At times, it's just how we cope with it and how we deal with it. So I'm going to move on to anxiety, and I'll talk to you on how anxiety plays, or how stress plays a role into anxiety. And I want to go ahead and let everyone know that just because I'm telling you some symptoms of anxiety, I'm not a doctor. I cannot diagnose anxiety. I can't say that you have anxiety or your student is experiencing anxiety, but you're always free to contact me, and I can provide those resources as needed. So what is anxiety? Anxiety is a normal reaction, just as I kind of disclosed about stress. So we have in our brain what's called the amygdala. and every person has an amygdala. And this amygdala is the portion of the brain that is really responsible for whether we fight a situation, whether we flee from a situation, we freeze from a situation, and it's a situation in terms of danger or fear. So that amygdala is going to be triggered by something that's going to cause us fear or danger, and it's how we're going to respond to that. If that amygdala is activated, then that's where we get that panic feeling, that anxiety, or those nervousness feelings. But what I want to tell you is, because you have an amygdala, and because we all do, that anxiety is going to be a normal process, and that occasional anxiety is normal. Anxiety is the natural response to stress. Again, I kind of alluded to that. It's a feeling of fear, or apprehension, or what comes next. You know, sometimes the uncertainty, especially with our kids and as adults, that causes us that anxiety of what comes next, and what do we do tomorrow, and what's going to happen tomorrow, and those types of things. So for example, the first day of school, or going to a job interview, or even for our kids that are in like communication classes, giving that speech, that's going to cause anxiety. That speech of, I've got to do a presentation. And for kids, that heightens anxiety, because that confidence factor plays a role in that, of what they're going to think of me, and what are they going to think of that presentation. And so anxiety is a normal response to some level of stress. Here's the difference between an anxiety diagnosis and that feeling of anxiety. And I think you can all know that we've all had that feeling of anxiety, those kind of butterflies in our stomach, maybe that nauseousness, those types of things. You might feel anxiety while at work or at school, maybe before taking a test. I know for me, I have severe test anxiety. I will work myself up where I am crying and panicking and, you know, talking negative self-talk to myself, because I always feel like I don't do well with tests. And that's a real thing for a lot of people, is that test anxiety. But anxiety disorders involve more than just a worry or a fear. For a person with an anxiety disorder, that anxiety does not go away, and it gets worse over time. So those symptoms of anxiety interfere with the daily activities. So again, you have a little bit of anxiety, that's okay. But if it starts to interfere with your daily activities, such as not being able to go to work, or not being able to do your schoolwork, or even those presentations that you have to do in school, or relationships with other peers or other people, that's when we might want to talk about maybe seeing a doctor and the potential of an anxiety diagnosis. That's the key. If it interferes with your daily activities, that's when you want to warrant some more questions. When I talked about a student with a presentation, or in that communications class where you have to present, you know, if it's one time and they have a presentation and they have that stress and that anxiety, that's okay. They completed it, they feel a little bit better. Once we kind of what is the word I'm looking for? Once we deal with that fear or that pressure, the next time it comes, that anxiety is going to be lowered a little bit. It's kind of like, for instance, with spiders. If I'm really scared of spiders, I'm going to avoid the spiders at all costs. And every time I see a spider, that anxiety is going to get heightened if I avoid it, or resist it, or ignore it. So it's important to tell your kids that it's okay to be a little bit nervous, and to push through, and give them that positive feedback that they need, so that nervousness or that stress and anxiety doesn't get bigger each time they have to exhibit the similar situations. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so here are the signs and symptoms of anxiety. And again, be mindful, these are the symptoms of anxiety. This is what I am aware of. However, it does not mean you or your student or anyone else has anxiety. So feeling restlessness, wound up, or on edge. So, you know, you may see people who are constantly can't stop moving, can't stop tapping, those types of things. Be mindful for people and adults who drink Monster Energies or Red Bull or those types of things. That blood pressure is already boiling. You're going to have that restlessness feeling. So just because they're wound up or on edge does not mean that they have anxiety. They may just not be eating properly, or drinking energy drinks and those types of things. Being easily fatigued, and I think this is important. stress causes us to want to sleep or to kind of, relax. And I think that's great. We need to be getting that self-care and that adequate level of sleep hours. But if they're falling asleep in class, or they walked around the block and they're passed out, then that may be something that you want to ask some more questions about. Having difficulty concentrating, or their mind is going blank. Be mindful. There are a lot of mental health diagnoses that causes us to not be able to concentrate effectively. And so just be mindful of that. And if you'll notice, as I talk about mental health disorders, and as we continue on through the Parenting Bear series, and I allude to a lot more, such as when I do depression in December, you're gonna notice that a lot of these symptoms kind of intertwine. And so it could be a magnitude of all of these different things. And so that's why it's so important, if you're having concerns, to reach out to a doctor, because they're going to be able to kind of take those concerns and take them apart and find, the best treatment or counseling services for your student or for yourself. They're going to be irritable. And again, that feeds into the being fatigued, or the difficulty concentrating. For someone who's not sleeping well or not eating well, I mean, that's all of us. We're going to be irritable. They're going to have that muscle tension. So maybe they can't get their muscles to relax. And if you notice, that also feeds into the restlessness feeling. So difficulty controlling those feelings of worry. And that is the biggest one when it comes to anxiety. Again, anxiety is a normal emotion. Stress, it is normal, and we're going to have it. But if those feelings of worry are continuously getting bigger and bigger, then again, you might want to speak to a doctor or something like that. But I will tell you that when we have negative thoughts, and as an adult myself, and I do the same, if we have negative thoughts, sometimes if we're not able to control that thought, reframe that thought into something positive, that negative thought is going to turn into 10 other negative thoughts. And then those 10 thoughts are going to turn into 20 thoughts. And then we're just kind of overwhelmed with all of these negative thoughts. So I would encourage all parents to start that open line of communication with your kids. And instead of asking, how was your day today, where we get, one answer responses, kind of ask, hey, what is the best thing you learned today? Or what is the worst thing that happened today? Open that line of communication so you're able to kind of understand the worry that your kids may be experiencing, so we can intervene and you can intervene as quickly as possible. Again, you're going to have sleep problems, falling asleep, staying asleep, or unsatisfying sleep. So that unsatisfying sleep, that's going to be the waking up, the tossing and turning, and those types of things. Okay, so here we're going to talk about coping with stress and anxiety. And I know some of this is going to be kind of cliche, and you've probably heard these several times before, but I am certified to treat anxiety, and I can tell you these are the biggest things, and this is why I put it on here, because I want it's the necessary precautions and prevention measures that we can take to help our kids without having to be on our medication and those types of things. So you want to learn how to relax. So relaxation skills can help you release that tension. There's kind of different ways that you can do it. Some people use their imagination to relax. So maybe having them close their eyes and imagine yourself on a beach, or imagine yourself in that place where it gives you the most pleasure, the most joy, those types of things. That guided imagery is really important if kids are feeling overwhelmed and stressed. That can immediately alleviate some of the heart rate and the blood pressure that a child may be experiencing if they're having constant worry. You can do muscle relaxation, and I can post a video separately, but one of the biggest things that I like to teach kids, even my secondary level kids for middle school and high school, is to pretend you have oranges in your hand. Hopefully you guys can see me. Pretend you have oranges in your hand. You're going to squeeze your hands as tight as you can, and you're going to hold it for 10 seconds. What's happening in this 10 seconds is, if your student was worrying about what happened in class, now they're only focused on clenching their hands. That thought of what happened in class has slowly diminished. They can relax their hands afterwards. That's a great muscle relaxation technique. You can also do clenching your toes. If you have them clench your toes, then hold that for 10 seconds and release their feet. Then that's going to give them that opportunity to kind of distract their brain from what's upsetting them into something more positive. Okay, so have that healthy sleep routine. You want to make sure that adolescents are getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep at least at the minimum. But also parents, I know that our kids are oftentimes attached to their phones and social media and those types of things. You want to make sure your kids are putting away their electronics an hour to 2 hours before they go to bed. And the reason being is because that blue light on their phone, when they put their phone down to go to sleep, they're constantly thinking about unconsciously, subconsciously, what they're thinking about is what they saw on that phone before they lay down for bed. So you want to make sure you kind of set that as a policy and procedure. That way they can get that adequate sleep that they need. You want to set aside time for fun. Self-care is so important, y'all. Self-care is important for parents. Self-care is important for kids. It's important for administrators, teachers, all of us. It's okay to have fun. And it's okay on a Saturday to say, hey, why don't you stop your homework for today and let's go do something fun. Get their mind off of what's happening at school and COVID and society and all of this, because I'll tell you guys, our kids are paying attention. Our kids are watching the news. Our kids are talking to their peers. Our kids are listening to us. They know what's happening. And so give that time for fun. Give them an opportunity to engage with their friends if you allow, and go see a movie or watch TV together. And that could even be just having a game night as a family. That's going to be very important. You want to eat a well-balanced meal. So something I talked about last time, and one of the biggest things is for anxiety. Y'all are gonna think I'm crazy, but chicken is a great way to reduce anxiety. Chicken creates the serotonin in your brain, which produces the happy feelings, and we need those happy feelings to not stress about the anxiety so much, or maybe the depression so much. And so really eat that well-balanced meal, have the fruits and vegetables, those types of things is really going to help you with your stress and your anxiety. And then of course, get that regular exercise. I know if your kids are in athletics, they're getting exercise, but make it a family function, and do it together, do exercise movies, or maybe even just take a walk around the block. That's going to give them that exercise. That's going to distract their brain from what's happening at school or in their assignments and those types of things. And if you are unable to do exercise regularly or those types of things, reach out to your provider and ask those questions and all other alternatives that you could do at home. Okay, so another one, and I kind of talked about this earlier. We want to focus on the positives, y'all. Our kids are stressed. We as parents are stressed. Community is stressed. Society is stressed. It's kind of just stressful all the way around. And I think we can all agree to that. We want to focus on the positive. We want to teach that optimistic of thought process and the optimistic lifestyle. If we're able to take one positive out of 10 negatives, then our kids are going to focus on that positive and not the 10 negatives. And that's going to increase their mental health and be positive for their mental health versus negative. And so you as a parent, model the positive. Yes, you had a bad day at school, but listen, the sun is shining. Or I know this test didn't go so well, but think about the last one that you did. You made a 90. Allow yourself to teach them those positives so they can model that same behavior. When people are stressed, you want to make sure that you're leaning on your support system. So learn how to talk to those people around you that you trust and that you're comfortable with, whether that be a trusted friend or a family member. You also be the support system to that person. So for our kids, encourage them to talk with their teachers and their counselors and their friends. And you do the same, encourage them to talk to you, and then you talk to your friends, etc. It doesn't always have to be negative, but you definitely want to release those emotions, because I often tell kids in school when they're experiencing depression or anxiety is that sometimes they're holding all this emotion in, all this stress is in. And I'll just give you an example. So I often teach it like this. If this was a Coke bottle, they've got schoolwork, they've got stress, they've got peer problems, they've got, it could be family problems, financial problems, those types of things. This Coke bottle is being shook. I know it's a Gatorade. This Coke bottle is being shook up. When we take off that lid, that Coke bottle is going to explode. If that is your student, that explosion is going to be depression, anger, irritability, those types of things. And so we want to do everything preventative to keep them from exploding in that moment. And so definitely encourage them to to talk with their friends and to talk with their teachers and so forth, because they need that the support system. And then maintain that sense of humor. So, I mean, I'm really big on this. You know, as a whole, we need the humor in today's society and in COVID and this type of situation. So it's important to find the humor and to have those jokes and those types of things. So people who can laugh at themselves tend to handle stress more efficiently. So if we're able to make a mistake and I fall down the stairs and I laugh at myself, next time it happens, I'm not going to be as stressful. So if we're able to find the sense of humor in situations and the positive in situations, then overall, we're going to be able to handle that stress better. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we seek out professional help if needed. So consult with your healthcare provider if you feel overwhelmed or you're unable to cope or your student's unable to cope with the stressors in his or her life. And then, you know, ask me, ask Jenna, you know, we're here to help you as parents learn more effective coping skills and to help your kids as well. So always seek professional help if you and err on the side of caution if you feel like you're struggling a little bit. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys, this. So this is our White Settlement ISD virtual calming room. So we created this as a way to really connect with our online virtual students as well. But this has everything you need. So this is the homepage. So if your student is experiencing some anxiety, here we have music and calming sounds. These are all YouTube videos that's going to have calming sounds, music, things that you can listen to maybe help them self-regulate their emotions. We have online puzzles. So sometimes our kids need something to do, whether that be coloring or playing with Play-Doh, anything like that. And I promise you, the high school kids like Play-Doh and coloring as well. We have online puzzles they can use, and it's all free. We have breathing exercises. So I know it's cliche to say, take a deep breath, but sometimes we're not taking effective deep breaths. And so there's YouTube videos on here that will show you how to really take that deep breath. Because when our kids and we are having anxiety and panic attacks, the best thing that we can do is to take that deep breath, lower that blood pressure, lower that heart rate. That's ultimately going to help us feel calmer and feel like we can handle whatever situation is coming our way. And so really, you know, watch these videos with your kids and allow the opportunity to deep breathe. We have the online coloring pages. I kind of talked about that a minute ago. Let's see. Muscle relaxation. I talked about the oranges, but there's other ways and opportunities that you can learn about muscle relaxation as well. Hopefully it can come down. All right, so here we have mental health resources. So I have designed this to be between different diagnoses. And so if we go to anxiety, it's going to have all about generalized anxiety disorder, those types of things, from evidence-based, research-based. It's teenmentalhealth.org. It's a government agency. It's going to tell you all the information that you need to learn about anxiety, and this is beneficial for parents. We have all of the Tarrant County psychiatric emergency agencies and 24-hour crises lines that you can call. And so these are all here for you. Their contact information is in each one. I also have positive affirmations. And so as parents, this is really good for you. If you want to just provide your child with some positive affirmations. Here I have ways, I can click on it. I don't know if it's going to work. Maybe it's not going to work. Ways to check in on someone who has anxiety. So instead of asking, how are you doing? Ask, what's been the hardest thing for you to deal with lately? I'm concerned about you. Please tell me how I can help. What makes you feel most at ease? These types of open-ended questions is going to open up that line of communication with your kids. And that's going to be key as your kids continue to get older and peer pressure becomes bigger in those types of things. Again, we want to take those preventative measures, those positive affirmations up front so things don't get worse for our students. And then we have, you know, stuff individualized for the high school. We have the Paul Pantry, those types of things. So let me go back to this. Okay, so that is going to be on the district webpage. If you go to departments, there's a section under counseling. If you click on the counseling departments, you're going to have all of our virtual rooms, our offices, and you can reach out to any of us. And there's Each room has a different location for a request to speak with a social worker or counselor, and your students know how to access that. It's on their Canvas, and then parents, you can get that as well. But this virtual calming room is going to be on the district webpage for you to access at any point. So here we have mental health resources here in Tarrant County. I wanted to make sure you guys know about Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Kids, if kids are struggling, they can chat this number, they can text it, and they can talk to someone, a Lifeline crisis person that's really going to connect them to those services immediately. We have the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services, SAMHSA. So that's going to be the government agency to access resources if a student is experiencing substance use. We have the National Institute of Mental Health. That's going to provide you all that information in regards to mental health services and mental health diagnoses. Of course, we have the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the Trevor Project, that's specifically designed for LGBTQ youth. That is a crisis line for suicide prevention and depression and anxiety for students who are in LGBTQ. And then, of course, we have the Texas Health and Human Services. That's going to be your 211, your local resource to access any information that you need. If you're looking for a psychiatric hospital or you're looking for food resource, 211 is going to be the one that you call. They're going to tell you which agencies in Tarrant County are available and the closest agency to you and how to access that resource. And so that's a great resource to have. Always remember 211. That's also the connection between Medicaid and those types of things if you were looking to apply for Medicaid. And so we want to remind you to stay connected. So make sure your emails are on your Skyward account for your student. We send out emails consistently, whether that be for the Paw Pantry, those types of things. And so make sure you're connected to your Skylert emails. Make sure you're going to the district webpage. Ms. Desiree Coyle does a great job at making sure that district webpage is updated continuously. Follow our Facebook, our district and campus. Each one has a Facebook page, so make sure you follow those. We have a Twitter, and then of course, school status emails and text messages. So I know for me, when I'm connecting with parents, I oftentimes text through school status. That way we can open that line of communication. And sometimes it's easier just to text than to talk on the phone, especially if we're working parents. And then here is my contact information. I know I work with secondary, but if anybody has any questions, you are free to reach out to me at any point. I will make sure I connect you to the right person that you may need. My number is on this page right here. And then here is my email address. And so I'll give you a few seconds to kind of look over that, take a picture, whatever you need. And so I encourage you, if you need anything, any resources, any food, any help with mental health resources, to please reach out to me, and I'll do my best to help serve you. Okay, and that is the end of our presentation. I'm going to stop